The Russian GAZ Model B engines were made from the 1930s to the 1950s. GAZ stands for Gorky Automobile Plant, shortened to GAZ. The Soviet Union began producing Model A's in Russia, licensed from Ford in 1932. These were built in a new plant designed with Ford and operated with advisors from Ford USA. In later years, the Russians began producing variants and knockoffs of various Ford, Dodge, Packard, and Autocar products from the 1930s to 1950s. Today, we're installing a GAZ engine into this 1929 Roadster pickup. Nice thing for today is we had 3 people working on this installation. That worked out really nice. Jerry and Todd did most of the work. I did a lot of photography, reorganizing where the camera went. When I arrived on the scene, the motor was already lowered into the engine compartment, but nothing had been hooked up. A good portion of this video I put on time-lapse because a lot of small things had to be done in the cab. Most of the work that I put on regular mode was in the engine compartment itself. This involved the starter, the gas, electrical connections, and things like that. Adding the radiator, the hood, and getting the fine adjustments on everything. The motor was already tuned on the stand prior to installation, so that helped out quite a bit to cut down time to be able to do all that pre-work. You can see us running around back and forth. Most of this is just attaching screws and bolts and that kind of thing to keep the motor in place. There's a lot of little pieces that have to go together before we can actually get around to testing and starting the engine. In this video, it's more of just a watch, not really descriptive of each part and each particular thing. It took us probably about 4.5 to 5 hours from start to finish with 3 people working on it. Here you can see we've got the motor mounted. We're trying to adjust it. There's a little binding when trying to manual start. So it took a little bit of maneuvering to get it leveled properly. We just pulled down the front springs a bit and that seemed to handle the problem. Once the motor was leveled properly, it was time to put the radiator in. That was actually pretty simple. As I said, with 3 people, it makes things a lot easier to do. One can hold the bottom, one can hold the top of the bolt, one can go get parts you don't need, so that actually worked out really well. I'd say the hardest part of this whole thing was getting that front shroud on. It didn't fit properly on the passenger side, so that took actually 3 of us to get that aligned and bolted in pretty good. You'll see that coming up here pretty quick. As everybody that owns a Model A probably knows, getting the front hood adjusted really takes some finesse. Those rods you hook onto the firewall and you adjust the front back and forth, left and right, to get the hood centered properly and have proper gaps. And it actually takes some finesse to get that going. Alright, so here you see the shroud going on. You can see this on this passenger side. We're working on this for quite some time, and it took a lot of ingenuity to get that going. So we got the hood on, adjusting everything, and actually we did a pretty good job on this. And it went on pretty quickly and brought the proper gaps between the firewall and the radiator. So at this point we got the hardest stuff done. Now we're kind of doing the fun stuff. We've got the headlights put on. We're going to start hooking on the horn, getting things adjusted, and this went pretty well. Horn was a little slow, so we had to keep that apart and loosen it up, do some adjustments. And so instead of a nougat, we got a So hooking up the rods, this takes some work also. Not intuitive to me to bend things, but a lot of these rods are old, they're rusty, or they're worn out. So once you get them on, you have to test the distance between certain things, make sure the brake pedal is working right. You can see right here he's bending the rod in order to shorten distance. So this is done on this side and also done on the other side, that you'll see coming up. This is just what you have to do. There's no other choice. Here we're inserting the choke rod. Now this has a grommet on the inside that in this case was brand new. It's pretty tight. So we tested it, make sure it reached properly, but found out, we're probably going to have to pull that out and open up the hole a little bit and lubricate it so that rod slides a little more free, which you'll see coming out. Depending on who you buy your parts from, some just give you a packet of a bunch of grommets and rubber pieces, and you have to figure out where they go. Some you can buy individually. It looks like this was all dumped in one bag, so luckily Todd knows exactly what he's doing. Alright, here's the re-installation after the rubber piece has been bored out a little bit and lubricated. This is pretty ingenious on how they got this thing to work. They put this little grommet up there, put the spring on. He's going, what is that part? Spring on, and then you put the cover on, and it hooks on lower and then lowers down. I think that was pretty ingenious on how they figured that out. Alright, so now we're working on the distributor, getting it out actually at this point. And we're taking it out in order to insert the cable. And sometimes that takes some finesse also. These parts, sometimes you have to have exactly in the right position in order for them to go on right. But once you have them, it goes on pretty good. Now this engine didn't have the proper bolt on there. It usually has like a threaded stud and you have a tightening nut. This one didn't. And we just kind of used what we had that came with it. So it's really just a bolt that tightens down the distributor. Here we're installing the rods for the spark advance and the hand throttle from the column. What we found out is not all rods are created equal, meaning some are longer and shorter, some are bent up over time, some are worn out. So you just have to go through we're lucky we have a stack of spares that we can go through and find the best fit. A lot of time was taken on adjusting the carburetor and the distributor with all the rods and everything, making sure that there's clearances and that they operated properly. I think this is a very important part, making sure the electronics and the gas are adjusted so the vehicle runs properly. If you want particulars on how to adjust these items, there are videos out there. You're not going to get this from this particular video. This is just an overview of what we did to install this engine and get it operational. Unfortunately, even though you have an assortment of rods, and so you have to actually bend things sometimes in order for them to work. It seems odd to me. Seems like it'd be a standard thing, but apparently it's not. So you have to take the chance and actually forcefully bend some things, which scares me to death because I know if I break that, it's going to be a couple $100 to get a replacement. Now we're installing the starter. That actually went pretty smooth. You can see this device on top. This vehicle actually has an electronic starter. So that device hits a solenoid and activates the starter from a button on the left side on the driver's side. Here we're hooking up the alternator. This is a 12-volt conversion vehicle. None of us really like dealing with electrical. You get it wrong and you mess up a lot of things. But this one actually went pretty good. Now here's the horn I was talking about. We had to take it apart. You can see it's pretty oxidized and dirty on the inside. So we hooked it up, made some adjustments, oiled it up a little bit, and then it worked pretty good. At this point, we're nearly finished. We're going through and doing some final things, tightening up the spark plugs, getting some alignments done. But pretty much, I would say 90% has been completed. We're going to go through the vehicle, make sure things hooked up properly, adjust it properly, make sure we didn't miss any bolts or screws that need to be adjusted or tightened. So now we're going to let the vehicle down on the ground and start doing things like putting fluids into the vehicle. I think we're going to start off with the water in the radiator. Make sure that's good. That's always important. It seems like that's what people forget most of the time. Again, it's always important to go through and check to make sure everything's connected properly, tightened. And so I think we're at the point we're going to try to start the vehicle. What I'm doing here is I'm looking at the fuel filter to see if any gas is coming through. We found out that the vehicle had absolutely zero gas in it. So I guess they did that during shipping, which is probably a good idea. So Todd, he's looking inside, verified, yep, no gas. So then we went out and got the gas cans and filled up with what we had. Now we're going for our second attempt, this time with gas. So a few little chug, chug, chugs, and we're off. It's running. Hope you enjoyed the video. Help us out on Patreon if you want to see more.